The Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission meeting for Thursday, September 6th, 2018 will come to order. I'll do the invocation and start the pledge. After we finish the pledge, we'll have a moment of silence, which I'll explain at that time. So we may all rise. Dear, wise, and loving Father, let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for the sustenance, and for the friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for the loving us even so from your boundless and gracious nature. We ask your guide in our word today to help us rejuvenate the Brunswick-Glynn County water and sewer systems. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to ask everyone to remain standing. Last week, a young lady that worked for us, Miss Dana Whitmore, passed away, and she left her husband and family. And I'd like to have a moment of silence in her honor at this time. Thank you. The first order of business is public comment.
Yes, sir. We have two citizens for public comment today. The first is Mr. John Dills about pump station 3114. And I believe Janice has a handout for you guys on this.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, by the way, to speak to, and I'm especially grateful that we can still honor Christ and offer a prayer in public meetings. I pray that the ones that would stop us are confounded, so I'm thankful for that. Additionally, too, I didn't know this until a few minutes ago. In your prayers, remember Matt Doing's family. I understand he passed away Tuesday. I just found that out a few minutes ago. Thank you for your time. I'll be brief. The reason I outlined these statements and these questions simply so I wouldn't forget something, but also for your convenience, you'd have them to read later. Anything I say here is not meant as a criticism of the commission. I'm not qualified to criticize you. I don't have enough information to understand this PS 3114 Southport lift station issue, of course. I'm hoping to get that, though, by the answers to these questions. Briefly, though, it's my understanding from talking with Michael Browning and Todd Klein, who've been very helpful, by the way. I appreciate their help, helping me to, or trying to help me understand this. It's my understanding that when the Barrington Oaks subdivision was developed, there was sufficient sewer capacity at that time for the development, but soon after that, and buyers could pay lot fees or pay tap-in fees, I guess you call it per lot, and either build or sell those lots. Somehow, though, the development continued, but the sewer capacity didn't keep up with the development, as I understand it. And now lot owners, like myself and my family, we own 4 lots. Among, say, 7 or 8, 10 family members, we own 4 lots. So we have certainly have an interest in figuring this out and going forward. But I understand, too, there are developers here that own maybe 40 to 50 lots. There are another 40 to 50 lot owners in there that are keenly interested in what you'll do on this matter. But anyway, I found that the lot owners cannot now at this time pay tap fees because the capacity isn't sufficient to match the development. That's my understanding of it at this point. And therefore, lot owners like us can't build or sell our lots. If you think about it this way, we discovered this when we listed our lots too, by the way, with Stephanie Foster. We found that we can't really offer a lot because no reasonable and prudent person is going to buy our lot if they don't have the ability to build there or resell the lot because the sewer tap fees can't be paid. But I like to keep things simple, so if y'all get technical in this stuff, I beg you to keep it simple. Todd talks above my head most of the time when he starts talking about these things, but it really boils down to this. We're over here, and we want to get over there, and you have the authority to get us from here to there. I understand there's going to be a vote that's coming up into September, early October on this matter, and I just ask the commission members to put yourself in our shoes. If you own several lots in there, or you own one lot in there and you wanted to build or sell, and you can't do it because this upgrade has not been done, I ask you how long homeowners should have to wait to get the upgrade done. I have some questions listed here, but some of these questions will probably be, one answer to one question might answer 2 or 3 other questions. My first question, and again, you have a handout, but failing a yes vote on this upgrade proposal from Todd Klein for the, I think you call it 3114, PS 3114, what is the alternative that lot owners have regarding their ability to build on a lot or sell a lot? That's my first question. And the second question is, if there is a yes vote on the upgrade, specifically, what is the time frame for lot owners to be able to pay the tap-in fees? How much are the tap-in fees? And if you could tell us how they're calculated. And then the third and the fourth question there's no underlying motive there. I just was curious, is this inherent in development when in an area of Glynn County where there's a development where the capacity doesn't keep up with the development? Is there a department that's in charge of that? Is there a named person that keeps up with that so that it doesn't happen again in another part of the county? What's happened to us wouldn't happen to others. And that's the extent of my comments, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dills.
I have a question, Todd. Doesn't Barrington Oaks have sewers already in it that are just, were installed by the developer and they're connected to the sewer?
I didn't sign in, but you need an answer.
Come up, state your name, please, sir.
I'm Jim Watson, and I represent I am one of the developers. Yes, we ran sewer lines throughout.
Okay, and the service.
Lines are there stubbed out at every lot, there are 52 lots.
Stubbed out every lot. And
Most lots, we still own 11 lots, 12 lots, excuse me. And all but one of those is over a half acre. Many of them are 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 acres. So we feel like we could do septic tanks as well. That option we feel is still there if we're denied access to the sewer system, of course. But the sewer line has been put in throughout the entire subdivision.
And how many houses are occupied there in the neighborhood?
Sir,
now?
I can't tell you. We're not the builders.
Okay, but there's several houses there.
There are 11 houses and 52 lots.
Okay.
Okay,
I can tell you, we do have a good association. Most of the dues are being paid pretty well. The homeowner association dues within there. We have our own association.
Yeah.
I'm not on that board either anymore.
What is houses?
Any other questions?
Okay, second.
The houses that are in there, they're on septic tank?
I think some of them are on that line, correct? Is that the line we flush?
It's, I think Commissioner Turnsley, I think your question was internal to the neighborhood, they are platted on sewer, the sewer system does exist. These are not on the.
They're not on,
Referencing the 6-inch,
okay, so where does the sewer go now?
different system. So basically from Barrington Oaks, it's about a straight shot via gravity sewer to 3114. It's all
Okay,
across the
but
street.
they can't add any more capacity. Is that correct? They can't add any more, if I understand what was presented, they can't add any more homes to that system because it is not sufficient. Is that correct?
It's designated as over design capacity at the moment, so consistent with other basins in the same status, right, taps are
Okay.
not sold at this time.
Okay,
but we're reviewing that to see, looking at the pump run times, and Andrew made a presentation at the last meeting, so hopefully we're gonna have an option that we're
okay.
gonna vote on at the
When,
next meeting.
when do you think you could present to the commission options for that?
We've, we have a group of options already in hand. This is familiar territory from where we once had an unsolicited proposal on the table at one time. That one fell through to the upgrades, but my next commission meeting for sure, we can
Come up with options?
more detail.
Okay, then I'd like a presentation on it. And on the agenda today, on item 8, it says funds transfer from expansion reserve to R&R reserve. I'd like a motion to defer that item until at least the next commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. We'll defer that item and wait on your recommendation. Okay. Anything else on this matter?
On that matter, no, sir.
Yes.
We'll move down the agenda.
I'm ready to go to approval of a minute, so,
Yes, sir.
One more comment.
yes, ma'am, sir,
Ms. Pat Livingston on Bergen Woods.
okay.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you for your work. I know it's almost thankless for you people. I appreciate it. I read an article in the newspaper, and I just have some questions on it regarding Bergen Woods. I'd like an explanation on what happens if the sewer upgrades do not work out. And also, will the lack of upgrades affect other areas? And how much of the upgraded system will be paid by taxpayers?
This is Bergen Woods, right?
Well, Bergen Woods is the proposed development off the spur, just south of the safety complex.
Okay,
It was
and
part of
there's an
the,
issue with the sewer on that one?
it was part of an unsolicited proposal, Chairman.
That's what I thought,
Right.
so I'm
And
not
it's been
sure
approved.
I understood that question. Ma'am, the issue is this. We collect funds for expanding the sewer system and the water system through tap fees. So the amount of expansion that we can do is limited by how much we collect in terms of tap fees. We've established a process by which developers can come in here, tell us what they want to do, and they can submit an unsolicited proposal. The commission reviews it, and we accept it. Generally, what happens is the number of taps that they're seeking offsets the cost of the expansion for that area. We don't have a lot of expansion dollars. We don't have a lot of dollars to repair the existing system. But the dollars that we collect from the ratepayers is used to repair the system. The dollars that we collect from developers when they build shopping centers, when they build restaurants, when they build, Bergen Wood is an apartment complex, correct? That's a commercial activity, and they pay tap fees for that. So that's how that all works in a small nutshell.
Okay, all I know is what I read in the paper, I'm afraid. And that's good and bad, I guess, but it says, the developer signs an agreement not to hold the county liable, which is the big thing, I guess, so that we don't get sued, if the sewer upgrades don't work out. So if the sewer upgrades that they're paying for, I gather, the tap-in fees, don't work out for some reason, what happens to the rest of the people in the area? Do we have to pay to get them to work right, or what is the situation?
I'm not sure I understand that statement because,
I think what she's reading in the paper, and I don't know, Taylor, did you cover that discussion? Was it you? The guy that covered this right here, but I think what she's talking about is this is only specific to that development, okay? And when you're talking about the county, we're not talking about Glynn County, we're talking about joint water and sewer, okay? We're not talking about the county taxpayers. And to put it in layman terms, what the chairman was describing to you is if a project like Bergen Woods comes in here if they want to build, whatever, and to get them, you know, to tap onto our system, we look at that, and if we determine there's not enough capacity in our system, there's two ways to make capacity. We can upgrade, well, there's one way to do that. We can upgrade the capacity, you know, the system we have in the ground. We can upgrade that to accommodate the added load. Now, the two ways to pay for it. One of them is if Joint Water and Sewer, not Glynn County Board of Commissioners, but Joint Water and Sewer has the money, which we're saying we don't at the time, you know, but if we have the money, we can pay for those upgrades. If we don't have the money, the developer can propose to pay for those upgrades. Rather, you know, so it's either we pay for it or the developer pays for it, and the developer gets his money back through the cost of the tap fees. They'll pretty much go to him instead of going to us. It just pays him back. And so,
Capacity is a big problem, though, isn't it, in North Brunswick?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in order to increase capacity, how do you go about doing that when
Well,
there's not that much water
it
out
could-
there?
well,
There's
it
only
could
so
be a-
much water out
well,
there.
it could, I can't talk specifically about what the issue is there, but it may be we just need a bigger pump stuck down, okay? I mean, it could be as simple as the pump needs to be upgraded,
Great.
And,
okay?
and
Because we don't, the pipe size may be okay, but for the amount that we're pumping today, you know, we don't need to put a pump in there that's 4 times bigger than this area. And so what we do, we just kind of rate the pumps, size the pumps, you know, for what we're handling today. If we're going to, we're going to have more flowing through, we may need to upgrade that pump.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense, not based on history, though.
well,
I
Well-
remember just about a year ago, you people were all upset that there wasn't enough water up there. You wouldn't let developers go through, et cetera, because the water capacity, the sewer capacity.
Well-
And now we've got Bergen Woods, which is gonna be okay. And
okay,
Well, we didn't have the money to upgrade those capacities, and when we got the SPOS money, we started buying the equipment we needed and putting the equipment in to bring that capacity up. So, and that's been, I think that's been duly reported, you know,
Okay.
so.
we have a large North Mainland SPOS project
Yeah.
to increase the capacity, which we're working on now.
Well, we've got a lot of development going on up there, a lot. We've got Bergen Woods, we've got hotels, we've got more apartments going in, and the water was always a problem before. Anyway, that's my time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is that all, Krista? All right, thank you. All right, we'll next move to the approval items. You have in your packet the minutes for the regular meeting on August 16th, the executive session on August 16th, which has been passed out, and the minutes on August 23rd, special call workshop, and the minutes on August 30th, special called commission meeting and executive session minutes. So, as you're ready, I'll take motions for each
Yeah.
set of minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes from August 16, 2018, regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes from August 16, 2018, executive session.
Second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 23, 2018, special called workshop.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes from August 30, 2018, special called commission meeting.
Second.
All those, please raise your right hand.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes from August 30, 2018, special called executive session.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The minutes are approved. Okay. We're now to item 6, personnel policies. Mr. Burrows, Andrew Burrows.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We've got 3 personnel policies on the list today, 2 of which we'll talk about first, and then the travel policy is somewhat separate. The holiday pay and shift differential policies that are currently in the standards of practice have been a sticking point for our wastewater operators and treatment employees for a long time, and Mr. Riles can speak to this. Currently, with the holiday pay, we'll talk about that first. With the holiday pay, an operator does not always work Monday through Friday, 7 to 3, 8 to 5, whatever happens to be their day of the shift. Sometimes they always have to work on the weekends. They may have off days during the middle of the week. Currently, the way the holiday pay policy reads, if that employee is scheduled to be off on the holiday, they are not compensated for that holiday. They cannot take a day off any other time without taking the vacation time, so they do not get any compensation at all for that holiday pay. The operators at work get time and a half for the time that they worked on the holiday only. Again, they are the only employees that we are required to have here on holidays, are our wastewater treatment plant operators, because at Academy Creek, it has to be manned 24/7. So currently, those employees are not receiving the holiday pay. The way a traditional non-shift employee would get holiday pay would be the holiday, say Labor Day on Monday, the office is closed, they stay home, they receive 8 hours of holiday pay for the day without having to take vacation time for that day. Like I said before, if we had an operator that was due, that's off days were Monday and Tuesday, they would work Sunday, go home Monday and Tuesday as their regular off days and receive nothing for that holiday being on Monday, even though the JWSC pays for 11 paid holidays for employees. So the edits you have in your packet, basically we're requesting 2 things. One is that the shift employees whose regularly scheduled off days are on holidays would receive 8 hours of pay for that. It would not be used in the calculation of overtime. It would just be they would get 8 hours of regular wage pay for that. And then the operators that work would receive double pay for that, so that they're getting paid the 8 hours for the holiday plus the 8 hours for their regular shift that they're there. So I know this has been a huge sticking point for Mr. Riles, and he's having a very difficult time finding people to actually work holidays, and he's having to do some scheduling gymnastics to make sure we have the plant staff during holidays in order to make sure everybody is there. So the shift differential policy, again, right now the only non-traditional shifts we run are at the wastewater treatment plant. Yes, sir.
Can you hold up a second? I agree with you with the holiday pay. I think if a person is authorized to get 11 paid holidays, they should get it, whether they can't help by they being scheduled differently. So I do agree with that.
Okay.
I think that's a great thing. And I believe if you guys are paying, JWSC is gonna pay them 8 hours pay instead of offering them a day off would be probably a good thing too, because it's a mess up with shift.
Right, yes, sir.
So I think that's good.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. And then the second part of this is a shift differential policy. This is also currently the only non-traditional shifts we run are at the wastewater treatment plant at Academy Creek, because it is manned 24/7. What this policy would allow for people that work second or third shift, they would receive a shift differential pay for the hours that they work those shifts. The requested pay is $1 an hour extra for those shifts that they work. They basically, if you start a shift after 12 o'clock or before 1 o'clock in the morning, you would receive shift differential for the duration of your shift. If you happen to be on a rotating shift and 1 week you work the shift and the second week you do not, you only get the shift differential for the hours that you worked on the non-traditional shift. This is a fairly common practice in a lot of industries, specifically water and sewer industries, where people that work 3 to 11 or 11 to 7 hours do receive a little bit of an incentive for working that. To that point, Mr. Riles has recently changed shifts, which has cut our overtime substantially, which will more than pay for both the shift differential and the holiday pay changes we are requesting here. I believe, what was your number calculated on overtime savings?
Actually, we were averaging about 200,000 plus overtime each year. We tentatively want to drop that down to about 25,000, that's what we budgeted.
So you're talking substantial six-figure dollars in reduction in overtime by the new shifts that we're having them work now, which previously, most all operators were receiving 10 hours plus overtime every paycheck, so that has been cut out. The holiday pay and the shift differential, fully loaded with benefits, should cost us in the neighborhood of $50,000. So the savings in overtime more than pay for these two policies to go into effect.
I was looking here at item number 8 on section 4.1, attendance and hours worked, and you have the shift beginning from 12 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the morning. Now, that seems kind of odd. I mean, someone come in at 1 o'clock, let's say 12 noon, then they work, you know, that's a odd schedule.
Well, that was just, I believe that time was selected as a starting time, not the shift. If they get here at 7 in the morning, they're not gonna get shift differential from 12 to 4. They're only gonna get shift differential if their shift begins at 12 or later.
Yeah, I had the same concern. I was kind of used to it being more of a, these are the hours you get shift differential, because that way the shift start, I mean, if he has to call somebody in and their shift starts at 11 p.m. or they, 2 o'clock in the morning they get a call, I mean, by this, that would weed them out. I'm used to it being more,
I thought it was basically
X amount of time to X amount of
11
time.
to 7 shifts seem to be more appropriate than someone coming in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and working to 6 o'clock in the evening or something like that. According to this, he'll get differential pay. I believe, those guys are already there. But then again, I also talked to Mr. Riles about, does this mean that if a person work half a day or work half that, let's say he worked 4 hours within that period of time, will they get differential pay that 4 hours?
No, sir.
Just when they start the whole shift?
Full shift has to begin after the time.
In other words, he have to work a total of 8 hours before he can get the night differential?
No, sir. If his shift begins at 12:30, the way this is currently written, and he works 6 hours, because that is his scheduled shift for the day. Now, we don't have any scheduled shifts that are less than 8 hours right now, but in that hypothetical situation, they would receive shift differential for the full 6 hours they were here.
What are our normal shift times at the plant?
We have 4 days at 12-hour shift, covering 24 hours for the day, and then we run a three shift for 2 days. Meaning that we run a 12, a 12, a 8, and an 8.
And what are the 12 to 12 start times?
6 to 6. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
6 p.m. to 6
Well, I think I could see that being changed from 12 p.m. to 1 a.m. I mean, that seems to be very odd there. Those hours that you put down here seem to be odd.
We can certainly change the hours if that's
But
something.
I do agree with it. They need to be paid differential pay. I agree with that. I really do.
If an individual is called back to work, he's falling in a different category.
Right. Call-out pay is separate from both holiday and shift differential. In some of the edits we talk about, if you get called out, you get call-out pay for that, not any other pay.
Yeah, but I still don't like
In my
that.
opinion, you should get both. I mean,
This is just trying to compensate or cover the shift workers.
Absolutely.
This is just about the shift work.
And that is, I believe we have 12 operators, so this is going to affect a small population that we have on staff. And so I think every one of them has complained to Mr. Riles on multiple occasions about not getting this.
Multiple years, every holiday.
It's only at Academy Creek, not at Dunbar Creek?
We do not run evening shifts at Dunbar Creek, no, sir.
I just don't like those hours from 12 noon
I agree.
until
agree
1
with that, too.
a.m. in the morning, that period of time. What about the people who working, the midnight shift? They seem to be left out.
Start a shift.
Excuse me?
They're not gonna ever start and end the shift within those times.
But it's gonna be somebody work.
Before those times, or start in the.
So basically, if I sign up, if I come to work at let's say about 11 o'clock in the evening, 11 o'clock at night, I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that.
For the rest of your shift.
For the full 8 hours you were here, yes, sir.
Okay.
And I personally, I don't think $1's enough. I mean, I think from a shift differential perspective, it should be more than that. I mean, I'm used to seeing shift differential significantly more than that. I mean, $1 doesn't really attract people to an evening shift. I mean, and I would think one of the goals of this will be to able to retain good people on that evening shift. And so you got trained people after hours and not have every new hire automatically roll on the first shift. This is kind of an incentive to people who want to work afternoon shift. I wish we could kind of look at all these small personnel changes and our total benefits package kind of as a whole and look at everything and make sure that we're equitable with other industries, with the city, with the county, with the people around us, and make sure that our whole benefits package is equitable instead of making the onesie-twosie changes. I wish we could look at the whole package and say, where do we land? How do we stack up compared to others? Make sure we're being competitive.
I do too. I mean, I do too, Commissioner Steve. But I also think that these people have been waiting a long time for this, these two small increases to help them to better, to be able to be compensated for a long time when they didn't get paid, holiday pay and shift differential. Now, the rest of it, I think we need to sit down and actually go over it, because I believe the benefits package has some things that we need to take a look at. Basically how we are, our defined benefit plan or our defined contribution plan, whatever we have, we need to take a hard look at that.
Well, when is the next holiday? Thanksgiving?
Yes,
So we've got a little bit of time on the holiday to get it right versus just,
Veterans Day, yeah,
Veterans Day,
2
okay.
weeks before, not, yeah, so we still got time.
but it's still November.
Mark, on the second shift, or the evening shift, whatever you call it, do we have certified operators and lab technicians too? Or who do we have there at the academy?
Lab technicians works, standard work day, along with some overtime, because of the shortness right now, but, the 6 to 6 shift, we either have a trainee and a certified operator.
So you have 2 people?
2 people, yes, sir.
Okay. And do they rotate with other people?
They rotate throughout the schedule. We have a 6-week rotation schedule right now.
Okay, so everybody there would, those people would be rotating with other people, so everybody would participate in the shift differential.
Exactly. We have
Yeah.
a rotation between the Academy Creek, 24 hours there, and also between the other plants.
Okay.
Everybody will make use of,
Yeah, I'm not opposed to making it $2 an hour. I mean, I don't,
I'm sure the staff would, any increases would certainly be appreciated.
I mean, if they're the same qualification as the other people, I mean,
Yes, sir.
I agree with $2 too.
Yeah, I personally think it should be even more.
Pay
I
our
mean,
employees, that's what we need to do. If we gonna-
Well,
I'm used to seeing it
they
tiered.
hadn't been getting it for a while. They hadn't-
They've never got it.
Yeah,
where did
so-
the $1 come from? How was that determined?
I'm not 100% sure where that number came from. I'll have to plead the fifth on that one. I know that Mr. Junkin, when he was looking at this policy, said $1 seemed reasonable to him, and we put it in there because there's really no, I mean, how do you officially calculate what the value of that is? So $1, we can do $2, $5, I mean, 50
Well,
cents, whatever.
The thing that is bothering me is we're just shooting at it.
Well,
We don't really know what it should be.
Well,
Well, I think it's basically what we decide it's gonna be, in a
Well-
sense. But also, I think the savings is gonna be with the overtime. So that $2 gonna come out of that savings from that overtime, basically.
Okay, well,
It's gonna be almost like a wash.
You said 150,000.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be, yeah, really.
We was
So,
well
I
over
mean,
200,000 each year. Our budget was about 220 each year, and we was pretty much right on budget.
Yeah.
Overtime was actually scheduled, and we wanted to get rid of the scheduled overtime, which we did with the new schedule that we put into.
Like you have people wanting to work.
And this way,
And the reason why we had overtime like we did in the past, because the wages was low at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was the only way to keep good qualified operators. But now that we are competitive out there now, then it's easier to, reduce the overtime and to add these incentives as far as the differential and the holiday pay.
In other industries, they'll do a weekend differential and an evening differential.
That's
And if you work a Saturday night, that's what you get, both differentials. And instead of being what time your shift starts, it's what hours you work. So if it starts at 5:30 in the afternoon and you work from 7 a.m. to 5:30 in the afternoon, you get nothing. If you work till, if you start at noon and you work till 10 p.m., you get it for the second half of your shift. You don't get, it's not based off when it started. I mean, that's, just selective industries. But,
Right, it's based on the number of hours that you
but-
work, basically, so that's.
and then it's
that's what
tiered
I was
based off of
thinking,
the employee's pay. I mean, there's like a shift A, a shift B, and a shift C, and anybody from, $10 to $14 an hour gets shift premium A, and then the next step, so that your higher wage team members get a higher wage differential too, which again is the incentive. It incentivizes them to work nights. I mean, for $8 a shift, who's going to look at that as an incentive? I just think.
Well, I would like to, I would like to say that before we get into a bidding war amongst ourselves, who can offer the highest shift differential here, I ain't got a clue what it ought to be, but I do know a lot of places look at a percentage of the pay.
Yes, sir.
And so I would suggest that we go with what the staff is offering and just ride with the $1 right now. But take a look, you guys can take a look and, check around in the industry and see how other people figure shift differential. And it may be a percentage, it may be 3% for the first shift and 5% for, because even the shifts I always remember are more or less like 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. Okay, the 3 to 11 afternoon, evening shift got whatever, and the one what we always call midnight to early morning, they got a little bit more even.
Sure.
But it was based on a percentage of most places, a percentage of what their pay was. So I'd suggest that we go with this and buy some time to look at the.
Well,
Look
I
at how they
disagree, I
act.
disagree, sir, with that.
Because
I
just throwing dollars at it, I think is
Big
irresponsible. With the money that we have, just to pick a dollar amount that sounds good.
Well, I think that's why we're saying we want to do
we sound good anyhow, that's what I think. He has no rhyme or reason why he picked a dollar.
And that's why I say, I think we ought to do a
the
little
thing
bit
is,
more looking into it.
we can't decide too, we can't decide, this is, we have the authority to decide that. And basically, we want good employees.
Yeah, I'm not arguing
And
that
I
we don't
really
have the
don't think, I really
authority
don't
to
think there's a
decide.
percentage anyhow. I really don't think, now, some organizations may do that, but I don't think ours does. I don't think ours has the capacity to do that right now, because it's gonna cost some more tweaking to this, to that. Pretty soon, we're gonna price ourselves tweaking everything, and then we won't have anything to tweak.
Well, fellow commissioner, they didn't come in here saying we had a problem with employees
No, they
quitting because
didn't,
we don't have a
but they
shift.
also said they
that's
had
what
had a dollar,
but
and we can.
I think we can do a little bit more studying on this thing, and let's get it right.
I don't think so.
Well,
Now, see, I disagree. Now, really, my field is HR, and I think yours is engineer. I don't tell you anything about engineers. I don't tell you HR.
Engineers know how to figure money. Give me some numbers, and I'll tell you what.
All right, we're not gonna argue about that.
Well, the
But
Academy Creek
I think
plant's the most important
it is.
operation in this, and that we have. And so we need to have a very qualified person there in the evening shift. And this is going to encourage them to want to work the evening shift too.
Well, and one of the questions that you asked was what are other utilities paying? Mr. Riles contacted multiple other utilities, and it's kind of all over the board. I mean, you can speak to that better than I can, but.
It was all over the board. I mean, everything I heard here today that they use. But because of our payroll and our teamwork services, we don't want to make it difficult for them. Basically it lies in my hand when I go in every Monday morning before payday to do the time. I got to know where everything is coded at. We're not paying them to sit there and by detail, by line item to see where this code should be based on a percentage of what shift. That takes up a lot of my time. I would like to go to standard rate where I know they got two codes. These got a differential code or they got a standard code. That'll tell me what they should be getting paid on that different shift. I mean, we went through this with teamwork. Teamwork, we're not paying them to sit there and babysit our payroll. It just does it for them. And that takes up a lot of my time on Monday morning. Go around and make sure each individual get paid properly. So in this respect, simple as it can be, the better it can be in the enhancement of my operation.
A good operator of that plant's going to more than make up that $2 an hour. I can tell you that in savings and power savings and operation savings and sludge disposal savings and everything else if he's doing his job properly and doing a good job.
Well, and I will say on the evening and night shifts when we work 3 or just night shift when we work 2 shifts on the day, A good operator getting some shift differential can help eliminate some call-out pay for maintenance men coming back if they're able to take care of basic problems without automatically picking up the phone and calling somebody in as well.
Did I just hear that Mr. Riles is having to figure out what somebody should be paid if?
No, sir, he's not figuring out what the amount is. He's going in and coding that this 40 hours is this and this 40 hours is this.
He's certified, and I believe, all supervisors have to certify a person.
What I thought I heard him say, though, was he needs a set number so he can figure this thing.
I'm not
If I,
figuring numbers, I'm just coding everything in proper.
well, yeah, code it. Well, if you code in that this employee needs to get differential pay, shift differential pay, I think the computer handles it from there.
I said the same thing.
That is correct, yes, sir. I think.
Yeah,
that-
I don't know why it matters if it's a even number like $1 or if it's 3%.
No, I'm not calculating money, I'm just making sure the code is proper.
Yeah.
I think what Mr. Riles was concerned about, if we had 4 or 5 different shift differential codes, making sure those are correct. I don't think he has a problem with $1, $2, 2%, 1%, any percentage thing, or just as long as it's the same.
Okay, can payroll even accommodate a percent?
I didn't check with the door.
Yeah, I think it should be a fixed amount, but, it could be a fixed amount per job description, for lack of a better term. But, I just think we ought to look at the benefits package as a whole before we make onesie-twosie changes and.
Well, I think at this point, with the discussion on this particular item, that we ought to have a motion that has a dollar amount, and we ought to institute the process that the staff is asking for. I think that, and we're gonna do this compensation workshop, that during the compensation workshop, we determine a fair amount for shift pay based on what other organizations similar to us are doing, and to see what the market is saying on shift pay. I've never experienced, never had shift pay, so I don't know much about it. And I understand that it's very important, so
When are we-
kind of so we can move on if it's okay.
When are we gonna shoot for the workshop you're referring to? Because, we do. Insurance is coming up soon. We need to be looking at insurance, but basically our entire benefits package and make sure that we're competitive in the industry. And conversely, make sure that we're,
It's something that we want to do in October. That's kind of where we're at on it.
So what would you like to do, sir?
I'd just like a motion that goes with the philosophy of what we want to apply for shift pay with a dollar amount, and then we'll have a discussion on that. So if you want to make it $2, you can make it $2. But I have to agree with Commissioner Browning. I'd like a little bit more firmness on why it's $2 versus some other figure or a percentage.
which is
And
why I say wait till
I look
October
at-
when we do the thing and make sure our total benefits package is right.
Well, I don't wanna get
why
into.
change it to $1 today and then $2 in October? Just wait and do it all at once.
Well, if you want to wait until October to enact this, we can do that too.
I think we ought to look at the entire benefits package and make sure the
I do
entire
too.
package is
I
right.
mean, if we're gonna be looking at the entire package shortly,
Right.
I think we ought to do that.
All right.
Well,
And that'll be before the next holiday, so nobody miss holiday pay. You just
Well,
look-
see, I kind of disagree with that. I think we should take this out. We're gonna look at the package, but these people have been waiting and waiting. I know they can wait another couple of months, maybe, before, but are we gonna give them back pay retroactive to,
I think that's reasonable.
excuse me?
I wouldn't,
Why not? I mean, if we decide today, then they'll immediately get the next payday. If we don't wait, if we wait until October sometime, then we have to start from there. So we should give them back pay, if nothing else.
I think
Well, I
that's
tell
reasonable.
you what, I make a motion that we award a shift differential of $1 per employee for the time being, and that we'll take a look when we do a comprehensive study of the wage and benefits package, next opportunity that we have.
I
to see
second
what we
that.
need to do.
you second it?
Yes, I second.
What was the
that.
motion again?
Motion to do $1 right now, and then we will come back in October when we do the workshop to decide as to
see where it needs to be.
When we're doing that, I hope we can compare it with the county and the city
Yes.
benefits packages too.
Yes.
So we're not changing the holiday pay and all that piece of it. We're not doing the next piece that's part of that motion, just the travel policy and
Well,
everything.
that was just,
the-
that was just a shift differential, but
Yes, we
I
don't.
think we need to see what the travel, what it said about travel, and then we can also back up and pick up the holiday.
Travel got an issue too. This is just for shift differential.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Just to
I can
get
live
that
with the
one
shift
out.
differential.
Say what?
I can live with the shift differential for now. I personally think it should be more, so we need to look at it same. In my opinion, the $1 doesn't do much.
Okay. So, do we have any more discussion on shift differential? Janice, did you capture what Commissioner Browning said?
Yes, sir.
Would you please read it back?
Commissioner Browning made a motion to offer shift differential pay of $1 per hour and to return to the discussion at the next commission meeting or the next workshop.
And the shift process?
Well,
Shift process.
That needs to be, okay.
Can the motion just be amended to say, we take the staff's recommendation of section 2.5, item 14, which is exactly what you just said. We accept the change the staff recommended of section 2.5, 14. 6.2-5, item 14.
Where's that at?
Both of our packets are different.
Yeah, I think so. Mine.
Yeah, the one I'm-
Same
Mine-
issue.
mine-
You have a packet for personnel for holiday pay and shift differential, and you have a packet for travel.
Well, mine says is 8,
There are shift differential, the wording is in there in two separate locations. One for the
yeah.
attendance and hours worked and one for the pay plan section. So that's why you're
Okay,
getting two
alright.
different numbers.
4.1.8 on the attendance.
Yeah, one is on 8 and the other is 14.
Okay.
So we want to make it for both of them.
That's on the pay plan.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I found it now.
All righty. We'll be good. We'll be good.
At the top of the page, it says section 6.2-5 pay plan, and it's item 14.
Okay. So do we have an understanding of the motion?
Let me try one. I make a motion that we, under section 4.1, attendance and hours worked, that we accept item H8, shift differential pay as worded, and that we defer all other changes until a later date.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on
Sir,
the
excuse me.
floor, so we need to dispense with that
Yes.
before we can really entertain the motion you just offered. So, you want to withdraw your motion?
Go on what?
Withdraw it?
Well, I guess we just,
There's nothing wrong with this motion. There's nothing wrong with this motion.
Well, or go with this wording?
well, we can vote it down. Vote mine down and then, but I never did find that thing in mine.
Well, he just told me mine's wrong anyhow.
What?
Charlie just told me that mine's,
It's wrong
The
because,
formatting on this is messed up, so it looks like, section 4.1, under practice guidelines, the revision regarding shift differential is number 8. But it looks like it's
also,
actually
under
formatted, it
14
looks like
something.
it's I-8, but it's actually just practice guideline 8 related to shift differential
Well,
pay.
what's wrong with just going with the motion that I had?
There's
Just
nothing
to-
wrong.
I think it'd be,
No,
I think it'd
let's
be easier to
just
go
vote.
with what
Okay,
Commissioner
Okay,
Brown
then we'll vote for that motion.
all right.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of the original motion presented by Commissioner Browning, please raise your right hand. The motion is carried.
Okay.
All right, I think we're ready for travel now.
All right. Now that we've got the,
Now we've done, is the,
now we got the legal gymnastics out of the way, the travel policy we brought before you, basically, this is just to, strengthen some wording to eliminate some vagueness and some outdated ideas in this policy. This has not been updated since we began as an organization. There's language in here referring to, making telephone calls from your, hotel room when almost every one of our employees is issued a JWSC cell phone. It also has a per diem value, which is substantially lower than government per diem rates are for food and does not change depending on where you are traveling to. If you're traveling to Columbus, Georgia for a class, that's one thing. If you're traveling to Atlanta, it's going to cost you more to eat in Atlanta than it is in Columbus. What the policy changes you have here basically just strengthen a lot of the language to eliminate some vagueness. The first one is about basically every employee that travels would have to sign that they understand the travel policy. We've had some recent issues where employees have not fully understood the travel policy and then got back and there was some questions after some expenses were made. And then there's some additional language in here that if we have if you have a vehicle here, but you decide to take your own vehicle because for whatever reason you want to extend your trip some other time, we wouldn't pay you mileage for your election to drive your own vehicle, even though if we offered you one. We have language in here about hotel accommodations to verify that you are booking on the block rate for the conference you're going to, and everything. And language in here about if you wish to have alcoholic beverage with your meal, do not buy that beverage on your receipt, even if you pay for it separately, so that if we get some sort of records request, it doesn't look like we have paid in the past for alcoholic beverages or meals for guests or anything like that. So this does not in any way impact our expenses. If anything, it would eliminate the potential for people to waste money. These changes just provide a little less vagueness for the traveling employees. The one thing also for shift employees, again, or not necessarily shift, non-exempt employees, currently there's a lot of heartburn concerning what if I travel on Sunday for a conference on Monday, how much do I get paid for that? If their normal work schedule is 8 to 5 and they drive between 8 and 5 on Sunday, currently the way it's worded is they get paid between 8 and 5. If you don't want to leave at 8 o'clock and it only take you 3 hours to get there and you want to leave at 6 p.m. and drive 6 to 9, you don't get paid for that. And if you have two employees going to the same conference and they leave at the same time and they have different shifts, they don't get paid for it at the same rate because one of them happens to work 7 to 4 and the other one works 8 to 5. So we would be one of the main reasons that we have got complaints about that is the argument is that they're having to take time away from their family to go to training. So the policy change here would allow them to get comp time for any time traveled outside of their normal working hours so that they could take that time off at a later date.
I think you explained that very well, but I also think that we need to defer this to the workshop.
I agree with it.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
You want a motion to
So
defer
we
that?
need a motion to defer.
Motion to defer to the workshop.
Second. All those in favor, is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, the item is deferred till the workshop.
Okay, and a matter of business that I forgot to do, Mr. Donaghy was going to introduce a new employee that he has that we skipped over, so we're going to interject that real quick.
Commissioners, as some of you may know, the position of senior financial analyst has been vacant since April of this year. As of Tuesday of this week, it has been filled by Ms. LaDonna Roberts, who is back here. She came in last Friday for a couple of meetings that were scheduled prior to her start date and to meet and greet a few folks. So she came in and we presented her with her task list for the first year, and she actually did report to work Tuesday morning to start that task list. So we didn't scare her away anyway. She came in, hit the ground running, and has this week done very well, and we expect great things from her.
You stand real quick, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Mr. Chairman, Commission, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very excited to be here. Everyone has extended a very gracious welcome to me, and it's obviously going to be a great home for me, so thank you again.
Thank you very much for
Yes, sir.
joining our
Thank
team.
you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Apologize for going off script there on you. So the next item on our list we spoke about briefly before. It's a different filter pilot study for effluent filtration at the Academy Creek Treatment Plant. If you recall, a couple of months back, we ran a trial with Aqua Aerobics concerning a cloth media filter which removes solids on the effluent to prevent foaming issues and any other solids issues leaving the plant. Evoqua Water Technologies is a major supplier of wastewater equipment. They have their 40X filtration system is a stainless steel filter, a media filter that is different than the cloth media. Works on many of the same principles, but it's a different media. And when we went to the show in Savannah, they requested the opportunity to put on a trial for us because they think their pilot could potentially improve even what we got before on the previous filters. This filter trial will not cost us any money. It will be set up in the same location as the previous filter trial, pulled from the same location, and so that we get as close to apples comparison between the two filter technologies. If we do end up installing filtration at Academy Creek, it will be a 7-figure investment. So we'd like to try more than one just to verify we're getting the product that we think we want. In your package, you'll have 3 things. There's the first thing is the Evoqua original thing they sent over. This has taken a while to go through because Charlie had suggested some edits to their pilot unit agreement, and their attorneys suggested some edits to Charlie's edits, and so they went back and forth a few times. So you will see pilot unit agreement in there twice. Once is in the original packet that Evoqua sent over. Once is the agreed upon between both parties that has been changed. And the last thing you'll see in there is the right of entry agreement. They have not officially accepted the right of entry agreement, but I have it on good authority from our attorney that he's not changing our right of entry agreement. So that is what it is. So the request today would be to allow the executive director to agree to get into this pilot. At this time, they were holding one, but due to the delays, they've relocated that pilot to a different location at this time. So the motion allows it for the next available pilot unit that is to come in here. So we don't know exactly when this will start, but we want to make sure we get the paperwork done so we don't get behind somebody else again.
I think it's a real good idea to look at this other filter. It operates a little different.
Yes, sir.
And that way we can see. And I would like for you to give us a notice when it's going to be here so
Yes, sir.
the interested commissioners can go out there and look at it while it's there.
Yes, sir.
Because some of them did on the last one. And I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. I make a motion that the Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water and Sewer Commission authorize executive directors to enter into an agreement with Evoqua Water Technologies to pilot a 140X pilot unit at the first available date.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion, commissioners? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. The motion is carried. Okay, we deferred item 8, so we're now at item 9, which is North Mainland Phase 1 change order. Pam Crosby.
Good afternoon. Before you today, we have a memorandum. This is the latest update regarding the change order for the 2016 SPLOST North Mainland District Phase 1. If you'll recall, there's a little bit of history on this. This was our design build contract with Constantine Constructors Incorporated to improve the capacity at 5 lift stations in our North Mainland basins. This was approved back in June of last year, and one of the caveats of this program is that we were going to do an alternative project delivery method, design build, with owner purchased equipment component of it to save on taxes on the purchase of materials that were used on the project. So we've brought items before, and probably what everybody's interested in is the backup to the memo of itself and the details that surround that. So if you'll recall, there were some delays with regard to additional time on bypass pump rental. So those are captured. That also, with the project schedule, led to some delays, operations and labor cost. And then also there were some electrical upgrades that we had requested during the design build process that also impacted cost on this project. One of the delays that had come into question when we spoke about this at a previous meeting was the contractor that we, Joint Water and Sewer, had contracted separately with Bionomics for the lining on some of the stations. We had received some feedback that, you know, maybe they had delayed some of the completion. You'll note that we actually have received a payment from Bionomics on H-22 in the amount of $23,260 to offset some of those delays in the schedule. There was also an issue in July when the final elements of this project were being wrapped up. There was an SSO at lift station 4028. There'll also be documentation in your packet. Our staff responded to that. So there's calculations in there for the labor rates and our materials that we used in response to that. But if you look in your packet, I think it's the third page that you'd be interested in. It's the summary of the bypass rental costs. So you'll see each station listed on the left. You'll see the accumulated costs through March of 2018 is when we originally were talking about the change order. You'll see the contingency that Constantine Constructors had in place for that. You'll see the calculation of columns 2 and 3, which is the cost less the contingency. And then you'll see the requested change order and then the concession through the negotiations that staff was directed based on the last time we presented the change order. So those are kind of the final numbers that we arrived at in the next to the right-hand column. So, and that'll be consistent in each of those three tables. You'll first have the bypass pumps, then you'll also have the operations and labor cost, and you'll see that none of that is being passed along as part of the change order request. And then the summary of negotiations is the final table at the bottom. So the original change order that we requested was for $159,446.75. We took off the credit for the $6,639.08 for the response to the 4028 SSO. And then the net payment to Constantine would be $152,807.67. We also put in the reimbursement that Bionomics has already paid to us, so the net increase in cost of the overall project comes out to $129,547.67. So,
just order of magnitude. It says bypass pump rental. What would a bypass pump cost if you bought it? I mean, is that a $250,000 pump? Is that a $2 million pump? What?
Bypass pump rental, depending on the size. If it's a 6 or 8 inch pump, you're looking at a $60,000 to $70,000 purchase for a pump for one that pulls behind a trailer. If it's a permanent install with a diesel engine on it, it'll be $100,000.
We rented it for $185,000.
Well, no, that was multiple pumps.
Okay.
That's the total for those 4 stations that are listed there on the left. So 4,005, 6, 48, and 4110.
I got a question. I'm looking at the recommended motion here, 152, then you saying 129. How does that?
Right, so what it is Bionomics was not a subcontractor of Constantine on the project. We had contracted directly with them, so we would have to pay, you know, Constantine their portion, but we're saying the net impact to the overall project is only 129 in increased cost.
I have 3 questions. What was the substantial completion date on this project?
When we've met previously, that was February 22nd, I believe, was the exact date that the memo was received, authorizing additional capacity where we could free up taps in that area.
So February 20th?
February 22nd.
And what was final completion date?
They probably, with the final punch list, all items off-site,
Final
they've been
completion
gone approximately 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Who prepared the contract? Who presented the contract first? Did Constantine present the contract to us?
No, we presented the contract to them as part of the solicitation, and it wasn't just to them, that was part of the bid package that we put out.
And there's a damage clause for not meeting substantial completion and in not meeting final completion.
Both of those components did exist, yes.
Right. And final completion is supposed to be done within 30 days after substantial completion.
Yes,
In this case, it was substantially longer than that,
that is correct.
which delayed us from having to be able to complete the project, so far as fencing and everything else, site work and everything else. We went back to a contractor who delayed them and got some money from them. So I think we did incur some damages. That's one question. The other question is, we had a major spill out there. Are we sure that EPD is not going to fine us because of that major spill?
From the initial indications that we've received from EPD, we responded within just a few hours, and there's no indication that we are going to be fined. That's an open-ended thing with compliance, and Andrew, probably you can speak more eloquently on that than I can.
What I will say to that is, anytime you have, and a SSO is an unpermitted discharge of wastewater, untreated wastewater into the environment. Anytime you violate your discharge permits in any manner, it is technically possible that you can be fined for that. Traditionally, it has to be a very severe issue or a pattern of issues. So basically a pattern of issues or negligence, which causes it to occur. We have not been given any indication. They are looking at that right now, but I mean, the EPD technically can fine anybody for any violation of the permit if they so choose.
Thank you.
If we were to be fined, do you have any idea on what the amount of that fine would be?
I do not know that, sir. I would think it would be, just personally, I believe it would be highly unlikely we would receive a fine for this.
I think the only fine that we've gotten from EPD is the fine that we got a couple of years ago for the one on St. Simon's Island. If I recall correctly, it was $10,000.
And
But there was according to EPD, there was a problem with a pattern, which is why we're doing all the smoke testing, because groundwater intrusion.
Well, I just have a concern because, I mean, it was a design build contract. The contract at 30% came up with his construction cost, and he wants another $150,000. Plus, he didn't complete the project on time, plus we had a major spill. So I just have problems approving a change order. And that's my input.
It seems like we are rewarding for mediocrity, right? For them not doing a good job, we reward them. Like what the city did with Mansfield.
I'm quite sure that if they feel they have a case, that the next thing that they will do is take us to court.
Right. Well,
That will run.
that's why
some
we hired
miles
Mr.
too.
Dominey right there. That's his job.
Well, I think if the change orders for work that they did.
So the materials and the rental, all of that has
If for work that
occurred.
they did, then we owe them that money unless we got a good argument that they didn't do the work or supply the materials of both.
So,
From what I'm hearing from fellow commissioner here is if there's a problem with performance and time, if we have liquidated damages for.
There were liquidated damages, yes.
Okay, then you could we can apply liquidated damages. But then we would, I'm sure they would come back and, I say I'm sure, I don't know, if I was them, I would come back and, look and see how the job progressed and if it was any holdups on JWSC's part that would have added to the length of time. So we're gonna get into all that, but I think if, I think that should be a separate issue than this. I just don't like to, this is not anything to do with the performance and time or the contract, you know. This is just about.
We got the capacity that was the primary goal of the contract.
Yeah, so,
So why the extra bypass pump rental? What was that? I mean, what caused that? What
So
led to the extra bypass pump rental?
There was multiple reasons for extra
Yeah.
bypass pump rental. One, we took delivery of rental pumps earlier than expected due to trying to get out ahead of the need in other areas. If you recall,
The demand from Hurricane Harvey.
Hurricane Harvey sucked up a lot of bypass pump rentals, and knowing that the market was going to get very scarce, we went ahead and took delivery of rental pumps and started paying on that before.
We did, or the Constantine did? I mean, Constantine did on our behalf?
Constantine did on our behalf.
Yes.
So they procured pumps early because they were concerned they wouldn't be able to get them?
Right, because literally the timing of this project starting was within a 2-week window of when Hurricane Harvey and Irma occurred. So, bad circumstances and timing, but
And then I would say the other thing.
But we didn't take delivery of them, Constantine did, right? I mean, I just want to make sure when we say we,
well, they were physically here.
They were physically here, but yes, the payment requested here would be to reimburse Constantine for them accepting the pumps.
Yes.
The other thing, the concession that was made by Bionomics was because they applied coatings to the wet wells that did not stick. They had to be scrubbed off and redone, which delayed the projects and extended on 2 pump stations the bypass rentals for another month due to them not prepping the surface appropriately.
How many days were they late on substantial completion?
Substantial completion was,
They were not.
if 7 days, maybe something
Yeah.
like that.
And how many days were they late on final completion?
I believe the contract said they had to be finally complete within 30 days of substantial completion.
Right.
I don't know Todd, you know the exact date they were out 2 or 3 weeks ago?
22nd's pretty much the last punch list item.
So August.
5 months,
5 months.
something of that nature.
So 150 days.
In that ballpark, yes, sir.
And how many, what was in the contract, what was the amount for liquidated damages on substantial completion?
5,000.
500?
substantial, it was 1,000, wasn't it?
1,000, I'm sorry, yes,
I think it's
substantial, you're correct.
1,000, it's 5,000 for final
Fi-
completion. I
final.
believe.
1,000 and
So
5,000.
theoretically, you could take, multiply 150 times 5,000 would be the
And
total amount, which is a whole lot more than a change order.
how many days do you believe we delayed the project?
I would say it was well at a month, close
We
to.
delayed it before substantial completion, right? Not between substantial and actual.
We gave them change orders for that. We extended it, the
The one.
substantial completion date.
Yes.
So we extended the date.
Yeah, it had already been
Yeah,
extended.
change order number 1 was a time extension due to the weather delays.
And this is the
Weather only.
project where we bought the equipment
Most of the equipment, yes.
for them, and we had that discussion with them at that meeting, that when we bought the equipment, that we asked, what kind of impact can that have to the schedule? Because they were concerned about the schedule already, and by our purchasing that equipment, we were able to bring the schedule back so that they could finish it potentially early.
Right, so that was, if you recall, I think what you're referring to are those pre-purchased pumps that we actually purchased the pumps, I think on the same day or the meeting before we actually selected the contractor for the project, or either we approved the 30% design, I think that's where it was. So, because of the long lead time, is that what you're referring to on the Xylem pumps?
That's correct, and we purchased, I don't remember the value of that purchase, but the equipment purchase that we made, do you recall the value on that
Yeah,
equipment
that
purchase?
was close to $900,000 over the 2 different purchase events that we had for that. Because we came in 2 different things, because we had, for a few stations, the specs already done, and we wanted to go ahead and get those ordered and not wait 2 more weeks to bring it as a full package. So we did a few stations one meeting and the remainder the next meeting.
And they did not, as I recall, they did not make an adjustment to their contract amount for that, for the profit that they would have earned had they purchased that equipment.
But I think all along, we had talked about, we knew going into this project, because of the legal constraints that we were gonna have, that no matter who our contractor was or what the contract was, we were going to go ahead and pre-purchase those pumps because of the lead time.
When they bid the project, they bid a price, which included that equipment. And,
No.
when we purchased that equipment, isn't that, I mean, am I
No,
not
the
correct?
pumps were always separate.
Their price came about at the 30% design.
Yes,
They were selected at the 30% design, they gave us a lump sum price.
yes.
And it's exceeded that. I mean, they've asked for a change order to that amount.
Yes.
That amount included a contingency. And so there were some issues. But obviously, it also affected us, and as a commission, we need to get these projects completed on time. I mean, I drive down Highway 17 and I saw a pump station that was under construction for a long, long time. It's just now looking like it's about to be finished. And that's not how we need to show our customers, I think.
Does the contract permit us to apply the liquidated damages retroactively after final completion?
I'm not clear on that point myself. We'd have to look.
Well, generally for liquidated damages, you just have a different change order, or you could incorporate some of that in this change order or something like that.
That's how people have handled those, yes. But like I said, I think I mentioned at another meeting, we've never enacted liquidated damages
Right,
on any of our
and-
contracts. So in practice, in theory, I can't tell you how we do it here, because we have not done it
And the
ever.
reason a liquidated damage number is in there is because it's difficult to assign the actual cost of the
Right.
damages. So if the cost of the damages are less, I mean, we have a right to come up with a less number if we want to assess it or something like that.
Mr. Attorney, would it be proper to make a motion to withhold making a decision on this change order until you take a look at the liquidate damages clause in that contract and see if, I think some members are interested if we can leverage this against liquidated damages claim against the contractor until we resolve that question? All right, that's a motion.
Okay, motion to defer until those things are worked out on liquidated damages.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, does that cover? Yeah.
I don't have any other discussion.
Okay. All right, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Can I add a comment? That's our question. Sorry, may I ask one question? I just think we need to look at as a utility. If we're renting 4 pumps that cost $70,000 each for 180 grand, and we're paying a 10% markup too, we really got 200 grand in these 4 rental pumps for one project. We could have bought them for 240. I think we need to look at possibly, weighing the rental costs versus purchase costs of these items for future projects. And I don't know much about a bypass pump. I mean, maybe there are 100 different sizes, and that's not practical, but I just think we ought to, weigh our purchase cost versus our rental cost.
We can certainly look at that going forward.
Yep, we can look at that.
Mr. Chairman. During that vote, we had one person.
Oh, you abstained?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Miss that, Cliff.
I think they need to be paid. So educate me, when somebody abstains, that's not voting or voting against?
That's not voting.
Not voting. Okay, that's what I thought it was.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? All right. We're now into discussion items. First item for discussion is the commission calendar. The discussion will be short. You have at your tab a calendar now of events for October, November, December. And then you have a calendar for, starting January for the whole year of 2019 calendar year. To go back to the remainder of 2018, this will be a calendar that we'll have for the remainder of the year, and we'll pencil items on the calendar. It really won't be in pencil because we'll have it formalized. But I think that by maintaining the calendar ahead, that we can plan our activities and our absences accordingly from the area. Initially, on the October 4th is the next commission meeting. Andrew, when do you think you can schedule a compensation workshop in October? And that will be added to the calendar. I think it ought to be around the 4th. That'll be a Thursday. I don't know of anybody that's got anything scheduled the first couple of days in October, but if we can do that. And that's the only thing that I have to add right now on the 2018 remaining. Most of the effort on this was to put in for 2019. And we normally have the first commission meeting on the first Thursday in January, and I moved that to the 10th. My recommendation is the 10th. And the reason why I recommended that is because the county commission, we have it on the 3rd, meets after we do, and we don't really know who the county representative's gonna be, do we?
I think we know who it won't be, but.
So I've moved it to the 10th so that there'll be a little bit more time in there to do that, and that also works with the city.
Let's look here.
On the March 7th meeting, how come that's at 10 a.m.? Is that a typo?
10 a.m.
I was moving columns around.
So that's supposed to be 2 p.m. instead of 10 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, we could really have.
Okay, on the, Chairman, on the October 4th meeting, so far as the workshop on the benefits or whatever, that's fine if we did it that day, but the day before, WEFTEC is finishing up, and I know Mr. Junkin and I will both be at WEFTEC in New Orleans.
Okay, well, it can be the morning of the 4th if everybody, they need to work that out so we have as much participation. I just wanted it around the 4th.
Right, we can certainly do it the 4th if, you know, Mr. Terpseed and Mr. Junkin are both gonna be in New Orleans. If we wanna push it back a week or to the 18th to do that, we can do that as well.
Okay.
I think it would be beneficial if, y'all could provide us with exactly what all you want to discuss at that point. So we can be prepared for that meeting.
You'll get that.
Thank you.
I think it needs to be total benefits package. I mean,
Yes, it will
everything
be.
related to benefits, I mean, needs to be,
A to Z.
sorry?
A to Z.
Exactly.
Why don't we do it the 18th?
Huh?
Why don't we do it the 18th? That way, I mean, Jimmy's gonna be out that whole week before the 4th, so,
Well, we can do it the 18th. I mean, I just wanted to get it early, but
yeah.
we can do it on the 18th.
I have a potential conflict on the 18th.
Okay, the 4th is fine. You can get it.
I could do it on the 5th, if you're back then.
Well, Fridays are bad in October.
Thirds are gonna be out.
Let me just mention, commissioners, that you may also want to touch base with Teamwork before you schedule that meeting, because they'll need their benefits person here.
Okay. Well, we'll just leave that whole thing up in the air until we get it resolved. I really want to just pay attention to 2019.
Why are you moving in August? I missed
Huh?
that. August of 19, why are we moving those?
Oh,
We were looking at moving August because it continues your every other week pattern.
Yeah.
So it made sense, since we were moving July, it made sense so that you don't have 2 meetings 1 week apart.
Yeah.
It made sense to move the August 1st and 15th meetings to 8 and 22.
Yeah. We would have 2 meetings too close, because we ran into problems this year with July 4th.
Right.
And
I definitely agree with August. I mean, July, I was asking about August. I can live.
so that's
with
fine.
The last page gives you a quick visual of the calendar for 2019. The holiday, I'm sorry, Chairman Miller, the holidays are in green.
So we kind of scheduled everything such that we wouldn't have any conflict with holidays and when people are going to be gone.
I probably will not be able to make the latter meeting in July or August in that case, but I mean, that's certainly doable. I've got, this is, typically first and third, I've got another commitment second and fourth. I mean, it's not gonna hurt, but
Okay, well,
May first, not a big deal.
so this, this is not a locked-in solid thing, just give you for planning for 2019.
What meeting is that, right?
Okay. Is there any other comments or discussions on the calendar? If you have changes that you want to make, send them to me and.
No, I just misspoke. I said second and fourth, and I'm looking at second and fourth. It's the fourth I have a conflict on. So the second it will be fine. So two of those that month, it'll be fine. It's just the 2 latter meetings.
Okay,
I didn't mean to say second and fourth. It's just the fourth I have a conflict.
okay. All right. Okay, we're going to talk now in discussion check signing authority. Mr. Donahue?
Yes, sir. Last week I was asked to put together a summary of checks written by dollar range and number. The current JWSC financial policy requires 2 signatures on any check that is $25,000 or more. Any check that's up to $24,999 only requires 1 signature. The authorized signatories are the chairman, vice chairman, the executive director, and myself. I went back 6 months in this analysis, and this includes just payments to our vendors and deposit refunds to our customers. Payroll is handled through Teamwork Services in a separate checking account. For that 6 months, we wrote a total of 3,595 checks, and the cumulative dollar amount of those nearly 3,600 checks was $8.75 million. And you'll see there's analysis underneath. 92% of those checks were under 5,000, about 5.6 between 5 and 25, and the remaining 1.86 were above 25,000. And then the cumulative dollar amount for the checks in those ranges is listed below. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, so what we're looking at doing is lowering it to the threshold to 5,000?
Right. That was, the discussion was in
Yeah,
the
which
executive
is-
session. And that would mean that.
Which is 84% of the checks.
No,
No,
well,
sir,
it would mean, no, it would be
It would be
5.6% plus 1.8.
it would go from, it'd be
to
about
7.5%.
7.5%.
of the
Oh,
checks.
okay.
So-
On average, we have about 45 checks that are over 25,000 per month.
And that would be Mr. Junkin, myself, and
The vice
Mr.
chair.
Brown
Yes.
would have to be available.
Yes. One of the 3, assuming I'm here on check signing day.
7.5% of checks. But it's Because it's 84% of the money.
That's correct.
Yes. Some of a lot of the checks are for contract payments and so on, and those are oftentimes very large.
I signed 2 today.
Well, I think we ought to change the policy to $5,000.
What is the change we're talking about? To drop it to 5,000
From,
Yes, that was what we
25.
talked about in executive session. And is the information we'll need to make a decision as to whether
It just,
we want to drop it or leave it at 25.
it just requires 2 signatures if it's more than $5,000
All right.
with the new policy, if we have a new policy.
I see, okay, so all we do is change basically the 25,000 in this first statement to 5,000. It requires 2 signatures.
Yes, sir.
At 5,000. What about something, this refers to checks.
Yes, sir.
Let's say when we make a transfer, how's that handled? For example, when we changed over to BB&T, to a new bank, and all of the reserve balances were moved.
That was part of the.
Was that done with a check?
No, those were actually done by wire transfer in between banks.
Does that take 2 signatures, or just take 1?
No, sir, wire signatures don't take 2 signatures, or wire transfers don't take 2 signatures. We regularly transfer money from all of our deposits go into a collection account or a utility revenue account. And then as money is needed for paying vendors, money is transferred from that fund to the general checking account. It will be transferred to the payroll checking account on payroll days, or it will be transferred to reserve funds for the monthly deposits to the repair and replacement and capital reserves, or to the construction fund reserves, capital improvement fee reserves. And those are all held by Key Bank, so the process for that is someone has to request the transfer. I have to approve the transfer. A third person has to actually do the transfer at the bank, and then it comes back full circle to me to approve the transfer by the bank. So there are 3 people and 4 steps, 3 people involved in all of those transfers.
And that's transfers between our funds.
Yes, from one of our funds to another one of our funds.
Would there ever be a situation where a check wouldn't be written and we would be paying a contractor with a transfer?
At this point, no. We have that capability, but we have not implemented that as yet. The only thing that we actually pay by wire transfer is the money that's transferred from BB&T Bank to US Bank, who is the bond trustee. That's done by a wire transfer on a monthly basis.
So should this policy also cover electronic payments requiring authorization? Or
Well, there were already 3 people involved with that. It could add a fourth line on the transfer sheets that we use for a sign off on that.
the 3 now are all employees here?
Yes.
Okay. It gets a little complicated if we replace, I mean, everything's going digital. If we replace checks and we start doing things digitally,
Well, it's
then
gonna.
are we still accomplishing the
way
same requirement?
The way the process works is all electronic internally here.
Yes.
To release it. So Mr. Junkin would be on there to see a large electronic transfer to a contractor, correct?
Yes.
Is Andrew part of that?
No, he's not part of the disbursement cycle.
Okay, who all's in the disbursement cycle?
There's me, well, it begins, the actual disbursement cycle starts with the requisition purchase order and all of that. The actual cash disbursement We have an accounts payable clerk who matches invoices to approved purchases, approved purchase orders. And she prepares the checks for signature. They're reviewed by the accounting supervisor. And the transfer to cover those checks is done by the accounting supervisor. That transfer, along with the checklist, comes to me for signature for authorization of the approval of the transfer. That authorization then goes to, we have actually 3 other people that have access to the banking software to go in and put and actually enter that transfer, and they sign off on that. And then once the transfer is put into the banking software, it comes back to me to authorize the bank to transfer that money.
Okay, we probably need to look at a diagram of that the next commission meeting to look at it so that we fully understand it. But essentially, any invoice that comes in, the person who ordered it has to verify that what he ordered is what he received before it goes to the disbursement cycle. So if a superintendent, he has to look at all the invoices that are against his budget, and either he or whoever he designates can send that along to the accounting people for payment. But he's certifying that it's the
Appropriate amount.
appropriate amount, and if I
we're
ordered
ready to
10 widgets, I got 10 widgets, and they were all in good condition, and the invoice is proper.
And they also code the check for proper line item coding.
And on the front end, the vast majority of our purchases are made on purchase orders. The superintendents put in a purchase order request. If it's above $5,000, either myself or Mr. Junkin would approve the purchase order request before they ever order it. Then when they come back, they code it to the appropriate purchase order and purchase code. Then it goes to finance for processing at that point.
In between that, when the goods are delivered, whoever receives the goods has to do a receipting of that so that we know how many units we've received of that purchase order, because not all purchase orders are closed in one delivery. And then all of that gets matched in accounting to the invoices presented by the vendor.
Mr. Chairman, do we need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion, it's just a discussion item.
Oh, okay.
I definitely think we ought to lower it to $5,000. I think we ought to add the executive director to the check assigning authority. I mean, I think it's silly that the commission member would have to come down here. I mean, because we're not gonna be down here very often, except for during commission days, have to come down here to sign a check so that we can pay our vendors.
The executive director already does have signature
I meant
authority.
deputy executive director, I'm sorry. Sitting here confusing me.
This probably should be put in the form of a motion because it is a change to an existing policy.
From the 25 to the 5. Who sent Jimmy a thing?
Okay,
Tell them
I mean,
don't
if that's what we want to do.
Is that what you're asking for, John?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll make a motion, we change from 25,000 down to 5,000 for the 2 signatures.
Okay,
Can we do that, do our discussion? Mr. Dominic, can we do that this week?
I mean, you would, technically, you need a motion to approve item
And that's to the next meeting.
I would say the next meeting that we would do it. But the reason why, I want to look and see on the electronic portion to see what we're doing and have that diagrammed out. That's why I asked for that to be done the next meeting. So I would say, because we may want to not only have the check signing, we may want to look at transfers and things like that. So that's where I was kind of coming from. I guess I didn't explain myself well.
We can certainly put into effect the 2 signatures on checks of 5,000 prior to the changing of the policy, but I'm just asking for a motion to change the policy as a housekeeping item.
Okay, well, we want to do a change it. But I want to look at how we do electronic wire transfer and change it all at one time, because we may need to add another person in that process to say, yeah, this is good to go.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this topic? Okay, customer service update.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This discussion was prompted by a question in a previous meeting regarding the itemized listing of the bond debt recovery fee that shown up until July 2018 as water debt and sewer debt. Since that time, the charge has been listed as water REU fee and sewer REU fee. And essentially, the word debt was removed from the statement because customers regularly voice their concern about a perception that they were having to repay delinquent charges from other account holders. And this fee is not related to past due balances. The debt recovery fees are each customer's portion of repayment of the bonds that have been issued by the utility in the past to fund large maintenance projects that benefit existing customers into the future. But what is an REU and how is it related to bond debt recovery? The City of Brunswick utility began assessing the debt recovery portion of the bill using this residential equivalent unit type of calculation in December of 1998. Each single-family residence is counted as one and pays the single sewer and water debt portion as determined in the rate resolution. This REU system is one option that we can use to maintain rate and revenue stability by keeping the bond recovery charges affordable for homes while collecting a greater share from non-residential customers. Each non-residential facility has an REU calculation performed using the facility table from the rate resolution. You see that every year, but you probably don't give it a lot of thought. But the table was devised on a national level decades ago as a means to size septic tanks, but that lended itself fairly well to sizing municipal sewer piping, grease traps, and even water distribution systems. For instance, it's fairly reliable, and Mr. Donaghy had done an assessment here within the past couple of years to take restaurants as a whole and compare their REU flow to each other, which the REU flow is 300 gallons per day per REU as a peak, and determine if their billed consumption matches that. Usage much higher or lower than the expectation would set off an alarm in billing indicating either a dying meter on the low side or a leak on the high side of the average. The philosophy behind using the REU as a multiplier is that a greater portion of the debt recovery should be billed to those that have a greater overall need for the services. The challenge becomes how to communicate all of that on a billing statement. There's only so much space and you only have so much attention span. There's a lot going into the calculations that reach the bill too, and not all of that is printed. So I'm giving you this as an example of if we sat down and we looked at what goes into the line items on the billing statement, there's not only a lot that gets calculated going into that, but there's more that we could put on the billing statement to make it more clear. So we need a balance between providing so few lines on the billing statement that the information becomes fairly useless and that the customer service phones would ring off the hook with questions versus having so much information that the bill looks like something you'd get following a medical procedure. So we don't want that either. There was also discussion related to moving the debt recovery charge into the water and sewer base fee, but that may lead to more confusion as an unintended consequence because anybody with an REU other than one would have a different base rate. You'd also face a situation where if you had multiple facilities, let's say a restaurant chain, if you had 4 facilities because of the seating capacity and potentially difference in hours of operation or its location at an interstate interchange versus not, you may have a different REU for each of those 4 facilities, leading you to a misunderstanding of why the base rate is different. Our desire is to simplify the billing statement by reducing the amount of data that's presented. Sometimes that's going to be in conflict with our desire to make the statement fully understandable in regards to what the customer is paying for. So we want to have all the information there that they need. Since June, we know we've removed the fire hydrant maintenance line item, and the water and sewer administration fee is now included in the base fee. There's definitely a better way to use the space that's provided on the billing statement to communicate most effectively. We have to put kind of a wall around the area that shows through on the billing statement, or I'm sorry, on the window on the envelope, because that affects how that gets stuffed at the bill printer side. But aside from that, the majority of the billing statement is still flexible. We can have some fun with putting data on the statement to make the customer experience more pleasant. Ideally, the statement should contain every piece of relevant information that can be understood without having to get explanations from staff, but we'll always welcome those questions. In reality, the phrasing used on the bill for certain charges will routinely lend itself to confusion for some, and we're actively working on reducing that confusion. The REU itself needs to be listed on the front of the bill. Like many utilities, we use the backer. This was absent for the majority of the year, but we reinstituted that, I believe, around March or April, and started printing the relevant information on the back of the bill. It defines some of the details that are shown on the front, but not all. And while it may be helpful, we have to be mindful that this option doubles our printing cost, which is already budgeted for, and we take that into account. But it's not uncommon for customers to say they want this service added, or they want this feature added to what we do up front, but all of that has costs associated with it, so we have to maintain those priorities. Water utility management, by the way, is a local small utility water service provider. They take a different approach. They lump, if you can see here, that line, they lump the miscellaneous charges into a line labeled fees, which is then, despite all of this text on the back of the bill, not fleshed out. So they don't make any sense of what fees are, which I can imagine generates a lot of phone calls to their customer service line. The REU process may not be ideal, and it may be confusing at times, but I hope that this information, especially if we can get the REU listed on the bill, will help make that more sensible for the customer. As I mentioned, it's presently not on the bill. I just mocked this up. Obviously, I wouldn't include that nice big fat red arrow. But the residential equivalent unit, especially for those that are anything other than one, would be very helpful to be listed on the bill. And I wouldn't put REU. I would literally spell it out this way, residential equivalent unit. And though it would generate some phone calls for explanation for at least half of the customers, I can't speak for the county utility, but for at least half of our customers, they've been facing this residential equivalent unit number since '98. But like I say, we're looking to add more features. We want to put the usage graph back on the statement. We had a usage graph up until last summer that indicated 13 months of consumption, so that you could see as a visual where your consumption lies. And then some of you have commented, have noticed that one of the challenges we're facing with our billing software service provider is a comma. Even in this example here of one of my bills, prior reading, current reading, there's no comma. And in 2018, that's something that should be easy enough to institute. We're in the process of making some changes to this template to make it easier to read, and a comma would be a beautiful thing to have on this billing statement. Any questions regarding REUs or how the statement's generated?
Go back to your July 2018 statement.
Yes, sir.
That customer only was a water customer only, right? Because
Yes, sir, that's my
They
house.
didn't show sewer.
So imagine that in addition to these lines, for a sewer customer, we would have the sewer base charge and the sewer consumption charge and the sewer REU fee. So for a similar water and sewer customer, there would be 3 additional lines there.
Yeah. And the REU fee is different for Brunswick customers than Glynn County customers?
No, sir. They're the same rate. We could, for the most part, remove that Brunswick and Glynn. There's a Glynn reference there if it's a customer that's outside of the city limits, or the old city system, rather. I don't think at this point there's any reason to keep Brunswick and Glynn listed on there because they're the same rate.
Okay. Does our bill, does it have all that, the next thing, the billing statement backer? Is that, it has that much on the back of it?
Yes, sir. And believe it or not, we could put more information on there. This is kind of like the frequently asked questions. This answers a lot of the questions that we face up front. And it's helpful, especially when we're on the phone with somebody, to say, if you look over on the back of the statement, there's some of the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah.
It is helpful, yes, sir.
But that increases our printing cost.
Yes, sir. It literally doubles the cost of printing the statement.
Okay, on a residential bill, figuring this is the digital world we're moving into,
Yes, sir.
why couldn't we put the explanations on bill on a portion of our website and direct people to want to understand the information to our website?
There's actually a reference to that here.
Well, then, you know, I guess what I'm saying is you should be able to move all of that to the website and let people go to the website and read that information.
If we're strictly talking about cost, yes, sir, I agree with you. I haven't had anybody complain about the information being there, but we received many calls about it not. Once we stopped doing that because we changed the billing system, we didn't have this printed for a number of months, and it was common every day to get calls about what happened to the back of the bill. It's realistic. I think if we were looking to reduce cost, we could easily stop using the back of the bill.
You say doubles it, what does that mean? We'll quantify that. Doubles $500 or doubles $10,000?
If we're talking a difference of 5 cents to 10 cents per bill, and we're mailing out 30,000 per month.
Oh, boy, that's a lot of money.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I question how many people look at it. After they look at it one
That's
time, they're not gonna look at it
very
again.
difficult to gauge, but I can tell you how many people called and complained when we stopped doing it. It was a lot. So
The volume thing, though, really should be a big help, and I think at least the last year's comparative or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Like March of 2017, something, so they at least know what they're comparing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The other thing I think is to reduce the number of lines on there, and as much as possible, maybe just for residential units, eliminate putting the REU out there, the debt recovery, and just have that as part of the explanation of what's in the rolled up portion.
There's no reason why we couldn't have that programmed where the residential equivalent unit doesn't show up for those that are listed as one. Anything over one would then get the
I mean, there's
comment.
only so much that the customer can change on his billing. I mean, that he can affect change. He can't change what we have as the fixed portion of it, the base rate.
Yes, sir.
He can only really affect the volumetric. And that's really what he's interested in. And we need to give the customers ways that they can change that and know how they can change it. But you have so many numbers on them, they don't know what they all mean. So I understand the discussion. I just want to start it, and I think that, we'll go through this year, but when we start looking at next year, we need to think about how we can make it more simple for our customers.
Agreed.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. You're up, Todd.
I'm up, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Good afternoon. This is the capital project report. It's a list of all the active capital projects, as well as down at the bottom, projects we call the bullpen or proposed projects kind of being looked at to be applied. Then also at the very bottom, there's also a list of projects that have been completed in recent history. So we kind of keep an eyeball on what we've accomplished in the last year or two. And just the format, this is sort of a new format. We presented this format last month, and we hope it's appealing to and easy to understand. That's the goal here. Start from left to right, project number. Every project as it becomes funded by the board gets assigned a project number, and any costs or expenditures related to that project then become applied to that. That's how we track them. Also the colloquial name there, or the common name we call it, whom the project manager that's assigned to the project. And then there's also listed, conceptual design. A lot of them are in-house, joint water and sewer staff. A lot of them are kind of a cooperative effort between sometimes consultants or whatnot. Then you get a detailed design phase and the actual construction phase where we choose a contractor to accomplish the work. There's the funding source columns are next. Three major funding source columns. If it's an R&R, repair and replacement project, we designate the funding out of there. If it's capital improvement fee or expansion, we designate it there. And then if it's SPLOST, we have a number of, or 2 SPLOST projects that are ongoing. There may be another column if there's another funding source, borrowed money or some sort like that. We'll designate that. Some may have more than one funding source. That's likely to happen. And as you move to the right side of the page there, original project estimate, that's our original educated swag there, is when we visualize a project, we think, what's the biggest number this project could cost from A to Z, concept to completion. Purchase orders, once the project, we begin assigning or awarding contracts or ordering services or anything to the project. Purchase orders are developed. Next is change orders, and of course change orders being approved beyond a certain limit, approved by the Board of Commissioners. So you will see those here. We have a column also for change orders pending, so you can see if there's something on the books. And you may notice one that's not listed here that's pending that I noticed was errantly left off, project number 702. That was a change order that was reviewed earlier today. Simply next is a total of the PO and CO. That's to give us a running total of what has been approved via purchase orders and change orders. Next column is what's been expended against those approved purchase orders and POs. And then the difference is simply what's encumbered, what we haven't written the check for. We have a PO for, but we haven't simply written the check. You'll notice the next column is miscellaneous expenditures. Admittingly, a lot of the difficulty in putting this together and making the numbers make sense is that in the past, every expense has not been done through a PO. So we have a lot of orphaned, well, not orphaned. We know what projects they're assigned to, but no PO is associated with that. So it doesn't, the math doesn't work out quite right. So we have to have this column in here, and hopefully the numbers in that column will eventually go away, and we will no longer have any expenditures that are not assigned via PO. There are still some there. That's why you see numbers existing there now. Remaining budget, simply what's left in the difference between what's committed and what the original budget estimate is. So how well are we doing, and the last number is percentage, what's left. Trying to make the math a little simpler for you to see there. The last half of the dark shaded areas are simply to give you an idea where we stand in the project of the different phases. The major phases being conceptual, detailed design work, easement acquisition sometimes is a large portion of the project, and then also the construction is the very last column. And the last column is the status, where we have remarks and notes to kind of give you a brief little summary of where the project stands. And a couple things to point out here. Talked about the miscellaneous expenditures and what that's all about, and what numbers go in there. If we look at, let's look at Mansfield Street, number 421. Okay, that project's still on there. All the construction is done, is complete. You'll see on the far right it says 100% complete. Construction's done. We are just weeding through the last pay request item there, and so we can't call the project done yet and bring that off the list. Move that down to the completed box at the bottom. Almost there, but you'll notice the original project estimate, there's a number in there of $1 million. The assumption is back in 2014 when this project was envisioned, that was the best educated guess amount the project would cost in total. As you move across, you'll see there's purchase orders for $762. That was original contract or construction contract price. And you'll see a change order price there, $301,000. So that's an example of some unforeseens that you can encounter. Those are a result of unforeseens in that project that we saw. Moving across, you'll see if you look at the very end, it says remaining budget, we're over by 18%. So that original wild guess budget was exceeded by 18%, according to the numbers. So let me give you a little glimmer of hope here. That's based on POs and assuming those POs are going to be paid out in full. So in the case of this project, there is some money that was not used in the construction. So you will see when we finally do close that project out, that negative number will be much less or much closer to zero. We'll still be a little bit over, but it won't be near 18%. So that's, the number you see, the percent remaining budget, that's assuming that all POs are paid out in full. Hope that makes sense. There's one other thing I'd like to point out, Project 702, that's our North Mainland Sewer Improvements, our SPLOST project. Multiple phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. We kind of narrowed it down to 3 phases. One wrapping up, being essentially complete there. And all the costs so far, unfortunately, we don't have those broken out separately. So you'll see line item for 702. That's all the costs expended on all phases to date. Now, some of that money that you see in that item, that line, is not for phase 1, it's for phase 2 or phase 3. We've done a lot of survey, some permitting, different things like that, route surveys, preliminary engineering for phases 2 and 3. So all that money that's spent to date on SPLOST, North Mainland Reroute 702 is not necessarily just one for phase 1. Want to make sure that's explained.
On your original project estimates, some of those, though, that actually how much SPLOST funds are available. Like for lift station, pump station 4003, that's available SPLOST money. That's not the estimate. Is that correct?
That's a good observation there. That was the original. It's almost like when you put that number and you assign that number, you really don't want to change. I think Commissioner Stevens has made a point to this too in the past. That first number you don't really want to mess with. You want to see how you ended up. Obviously, in that one, we're going to be over the 3.3, which is, and that number was assigned simply, I think, because that was the amount that was finally whittled down in the SPLOST that it was awarded to. But correct. We can envision that one being over the original.
On the North Mainland, the 702, under the status, it appears that phase 2, you got phase 2 and phase 3.
Yes, sir.
I think those need to be swapped. Don't you have, because you mentioned the Canal Road required, that should be phase 2, not on the phase 3. Looks like those two things need to be swapped.
I'm sure I don't understand.
Phase,
The status.
yeah, right, and the project names?
Under the status,
Oh, the status?
on the far right.
Your status boxes don't match your phases on the front side, and that's because originally Phase 2 was going to be the downstream work, and based off some discussions we had, we may do the upstream work first.
Right.
So if we're gonna reorganize that, yes, certainly we should redo
Because
those.
Canal Road's definitely in phase 2, is not in phase 3.
You are correct.
Do you have the start date next phase anticipated? Do you have anywhere on here the number of days estimated from start to finish on the project?
That was, Commissioner Copeland mentioned that, and that's still intend to put that column in there. I think we can squeeze another column on the 11 by 17 here. That's gonna be a moving target a lot of times, but we can.
Well, I don't mind the moving target so much, but the thing that I'm concerned about is we made an agreement when we accepted the SPLOST money to get this done by 2020. And, you know, we got a year to finish these 2 phases. 2 years, I guess, 19 and 20. Are we gonna do it?
We have to do it.
Well, we're gonna change phase 3 and make it phase 2, and then we're gonna take phase 2 and make it phase 3. Are we ready to go to contract on these?
there's still some more questions that we're answering.
We're looking at a couple of options. Commissioner Turnipseed presented an option we had considered before. We're looking at again now. We're gonna run estimates on that to compare to the estimate we presented at the commission meeting, and at the workshop. And if you recall, at the workshop, we discussed at that time having an RFP prepared to bring to you for review the second meeting in September. So we are still, that is still the goal, to have a draft RFP prepared for that date for y'all to review. And we'll have the estimate for Mr. Turnipseed's option as well on that date.
Why, what is the value of the new option? Ben?
What's that?
What do you have them doing?
Well, instead of running the force main all the way to Academy Creek, it's using an existing 30-inch gravity main that needs to be rehabbed anyway. And if you look back at, that was the option that Four Waters recommended when they evaluated about 11 options back when this was first looked at.
Well,
It's actually going to speed up the work. It would complete the work a whole lot quicker by doing this.
Okay, you all looked at it, and what did you come up with?
Well, my understanding from the original conversation I had with Todd today, one of the options Mr. Turnipseed put forth was to allow us to pump in both directions from 4110. The downstream assets through 4036 and 4035 definitely need work. As Mr. Turnipseed said, we need to work on those either way. So the option he's proposing is to line those downstream assets where possible, and the vast majority of them should be lineable. There may be certain sections we have to go in and dig and replace, just based off condition, but the vast majority of it should be lineable. With that being said, we had some concerns whether that 30-inch pipe would hold the capacity we were talking about, and we were going to look at potentially upsizing that pipe. And if you have to dig and upsize that pipe, the cost significantly balloons on you. If we can pump it in both directions, there's the potential, and I think the strong potential, you would not have to upsize that pipeline size, and it can all be done trenchlessly, just lining it instead of replacing and upsizing lines. So we have not ran the numbers on that yet. We will get those to you. I will say I don't expect the price to drop in half or anything, but there may be some reductions in that by doing that, because there is a lot of pipe that would have to be lined. But like Mr. Turnipseed did say, we have to do that work either way.
Reductions in time and cost.
Yes, sir.
And time as well.
Yes, sir.
And as proposed before, it's going to cost an additional $3 million over the SPLOST funds. Hopefully this will not cost additional $3 million for us.
Hopefully not, okay.
And y'all gonna have that info for us in September?
The goal would be to have that estimate to you by the next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting in September. Okay.
Luckily, we already had the flows figured out, so it's just pricing the pipe out.
Piece of cake.
If I was here to midnight that week, 1 o'clock shouldn't be a problem for you next week.
Okay.
Shift differential.
Well, yeah.
Unfortunately,
applies
that
to
applies.
non-exempt employees.
Yeah, we didn't sign up for that. We're good, we're good.
Okay.
All right, any comments on the format? Is this helpful to see it in this way, or to track the money? And of course, Mr. Donaghy's financials will have much more financial detail, you know, the higher level picture of the fund balances. But this is to give you a snapshot of the individual projects.
I do have a question on a couple of the items after we finish that, but in 417, that's 2014, is when that project was identified and money applied to it.
Correct.
And we only spent we still have $934,000 left on it. Where's that project going? Ridgewood Water Production Facility.
Oh. That, it's being evaluated whether or not to do for the North Mainland. There's some issues with water production from our Miocene wells in that area. And we're trying to see if it makes sense for us to go ahead and develop that well. I mean, the well is existing. It basically kind of like we did on the north end of the island up at Hampton Point, be a similar.
Okay. getting close to 4 years here. We've been evaluating it.
We're waiting on the go.
Well, who's doing the evaluation?
It's in the list actually for the 5-year, to.
Okay, so
move
it's our
forward with.
work to do, we just haven't gotten to it.
Yes, sir.
I'm, you know,
Yes, sir.
Do we need the well?
It would be helpful in North Mainland. Let's, we can give you some more detail. I know that's kind of a real subjective statement for me to say, but it would be helpful, and it's a good strategy to put that one in. That was designed, there was 3, I think it was, similar production facilities all designed at the same time, put up on the shelf, Hampton Point being one of them. This is designed essentially the same way. So it's about ready to go. We put a bid package together and put it out.
But the well's there. The well's been drilled.
There is a well, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's a fire well only
Fire
right now.
well.
Yeah.
And this would be to convert it to a treatment well.
Production well, right.
okay.
The Magnolia Park water improvements, that's City of Brunswick's participating with that.
Correct.
Is that a CDBG for them, or is that?
No.
Okay. What's the status of that so far as engineering, and when will we be taking bids on that?
Right. So I talked with city engineer today to get the latest and greatest update for our meeting. And we expect those things to be let for construction first quarter of 2019, possibly February. So.
Where are we at with the addition of valving so we can isolate the critical facilities in the community for hurricane preparedness? Is that project reflected on here, or is that just more of a?
That was being done through operational funds. We have not, we have 3 of the 4 figured out for sure. The 4th one, we can get them water. We are looking at ways to reduce water hammer on that line so that we don't have problems. They would still have water. We just might have some issues if it goes into an extended period with only them using it.
Who is
So,
they?
The jail. But again, we have the ability to get everybody water right now. There may be some additional things. We're looking at buying some pressure valves to put on hydrants to bleed off some pressure if it gets too high.
But going into this hurricane season, we can isolate those 4 facilities and lead them home.
That is my understanding from our distribution staff, is we can get water to everybody. We can get water to those 4 customers. We will not be providing water to everybody.
I'm trying to figure out these numbers.
Okay. Give me a check. There might be some puzzles in there.
I'm just trying to figure out exactly what the column means. So the percent remaining budget
Right.
is the remaining amount of original budget.
Of the original project estimate.
So that's,
Yes, budget.
it's not telling us, that must be what you were talking about earlier. It's not telling us the forecasted finish. So.
As far as completion of the work?
Like if I look at
Talking about money.
503 Canal Crossing, 1.5 million original budget. We've got purchase orders and change orders, 811. Expenditures to POs, encumbrances, so the encumbrances plus the expenditures to POs, if you add those, that equals the total PO plus
Correct.
change order. Then you have some miscellaneous, which is in addition to that, 28,000. So we add all of that together. Then you have remaining budget. That remaining budget is actually original budget less expenditures to POs, less encumbrances, and less expenditures miscellaneous. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And then percent remaining budget then becomes
It's the percent of that
the percent
total.
that's left out of the
Yeah.
1.5.
Correct.
But we're gonna spend more than 1.5.
I don't think that
Because we have
percentage.
change orders of,
It's not that.
785.
That's including, that's everything together. That's including the change orders, right? Yeah, change orders are not in addition to that, no, so the number.
1.5 includes the change orders? No, the 1.5 is the original project estimate.
Correct.
I think that 44% is the percentage of what 662 is.
That's what's left to be
Yes, I think
Up
that,
to
paid to
1.5.
the,
right.
paid out of the 1.5, but the total cost to complete this project, what is it?
The total cost to complete the project would be expenditures to POs,
811, yeah, that's the,
plus expenditures miscellaneous, plus whatever the balance is on these encumbrances are gonna be paid out.
You're right.
So that's the 811, 586.
But 662 is 44%.
The 785, not the 811. So it would,
Oh, 785,
plus the 26.
26,393.
And the 26,250.
Plus the 26,250,
Subtract that from the 1.5, divide that number into 1.5, you get 44% left.
So we're gonna finish that under budget?
Yes, sir.
correct. And
Oh,
so
I see.
the idea is every project doesn't make it, going forward, the project doesn't make it, it doesn't get an official number and doesn't make it to the project list until it's funded and approved. It's two things, funded and approved by the commission, by the board. And so if that project were to finish today, 44% of 1.5 would go back in the pot for other projects. Does that make sense?
Yes, so where'd the 1.5 come from? To begin with?
Good question.
I think what he's,
Original project estimate.
I think what he's saying is, once we take bids on a project and we know we need to add contingencies to it and then change the budget to that number.
Yeah, that's what I would
And then we know what the costs are, and so we can use those funds someplace else if we need to.
That's kind of the challenging question there that we need to ask ourselves and decide what we're gonna do, because that's what's happened in the past, is that column that I'm calling original project estimate has fluctuated. And we did that. We adjusted it as we awarded contracts and it got knocked down and down and down. How do we want to do that? Do we want to say, how well did we, at the end of the project, how well did we come in? From original estimate? Do we want to make sure we keep that money partitioned off
From the
that
bids,
project?
yeah. I mean, after we take the bids and we know, we've signed the contract and we know what this is gonna cost.
Yeah, and
That's what we wanna know, how well we did against that number.
that's what makes sense to me. I think the conversation we had a long time ago was, my point was, if we take something and just say the Constantine thing, for example, since we just recently talked about it, if it was originally 2.1 million and we did a change order for another 200,000, now it's at 2.3 million, we did a change order for another 200,000, now it's at 2.5 million, and we're benchmarking against the 2.5 million, well, we're always gonna be in budget if
Correct.
we keep adding change orders. So, I
Exactly.
mean, we're not benchmarking anything because we're always in budget. So, I mean, we have to benchmark against something to see where they're in budget. I mean, and I think it should be the original contract value, whatever that,
The original contract value.
right, whatever that
Not the
is.
original estimate.
Which is not the 1.5 million, it's something else.
So when projects are assigned, and when they're approved for funding and moved to the list, we don't have any contracts yet. There's a portion of money to fund that project that's cordoned off and sectioned in there. That's what that column I'm calling original project
That's the
estimate is.
1.5.
Now, it's certainly up to, we can base,
Well,
I mean, I can hide that column, that's for internal, I want to see how well I did.
I think probably what you ought to do is have on your spreadsheet where you have what your original estimate was, but a column that we see, which, I mean, it may be still the original estimate until you get contracts, but the only thing we would see is what the current cost estimate is based on the contract. And then if you do a change order, then that becomes added in, and that's the new cost. So as you're doing change orders, you start to see what your original estimate was based on the contract and what it's grown to, given what's happening to the contract.
I don't think change orders should change the contract though, because we're always
I
within
didn't
budget now.
say change the
I mean,
contract.
change the number, change what we're benchmarking against.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you always have, if you award a $2 million contract and then you award another $150,000 in change order, you ought to see both numbers.
Then we're
The 2
150 over
million
budget.
and then the 150, And now we have a new contract value of $2,150,000.
Right, and we're 150 over budget.
That's correct.
But in most contracts, when we have a award, we're gonna have some contingencies that we can put in there also.
Right.
So we probably ought to put 10% contingencies to cover change orders. And
I-
that way we got a budgeted number we're dealing with. This is kind of misleading. It says original project estimate, and then you got parentheses budget. And it's like we approved that number for the budget. We might not have approved that number for our budget. But when we award the contract, we've approved that number for the budget.
Well, you would approve that number when this project gets moved onto the list.
Okay.
Commissioner, we use that number to determine how much reserve there is left to commit. Once that project is approved, we don't know what the contract amounts are on that. So we have to reserve some amount of money from the R&R reserve.
Right.
And the other reserves.
But once we take bids, if it comes in less than that, we can, that will free some reserves for other projects.
Once we know
That's what
that
we're saying.
amount is, then we can amend that.
Right.
And one thing I would like to say, you're talking about, once the contract is let, we would benchmark ourselves against that contract. A lot of our projects have multiple contracts on them. So we would have to add all that together, so you're still not gonna have, contract is 500,000, expense is 550, it's gonna be these 4 contracts add up to X amount, so.
The
Plus
design,
the contingency that you were suggesting.
Right, so just.
I'm saying, it shouldn't be based off the conceptual number that you just come up with when you're just trying to plug something in for 5 years from now. It should be based on projected cost at whatever point we draw that line. And I guess that's the hard part, is where you draw the line, but I mean, when you bring it for approval, I mean, it's, you gotta engineer it, you got a design cost, you got operational cost, you got temporary pump cost, all these things added in, and they say, well, this is how much we anticipate this costing. Well, if it goes over that, then we're over budget.
The percent remaining budget, I think what I'm hearing is actually the percent that's left associated with the amount of funds that were partitioned out of reserve.
That's correct.
For this,
Correct.
for this project.
And we want to free those up as soon as possible, yes, to go back to another project or.
And when you see 44%, then you're saying, we're not using it all.
Right.
That's what's important about that number.
Correct.
But it's also important to know, how's the project performing? How are we performing from a project cost perspective, in reference to the benchmark of the sum of all the contracts plus our contingency? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
We just need to talk about good money management. Like 96% sitting out there for 4 years. That's not really good. We're either gonna do the project, we're not gonna do the project.
I agree.
And so you need to make the money move faster. Having said that, Commissioner, we need to go into executive session for a few minutes. So we need to kind of conclude our discussion here, if we can.
Thank you very much for the feedback. Definitely open, that's the whole point, is to make everything as clear as possible. So, all right, thank you.
You want a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion to go into executive direct. We're not gonna have an executive director's update. We've covered the thing that I was gonna discuss, I understand that. So we're gonna move into executive session now for personnel issue.
Motion to move into executive session for personnel issue.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, we'll move in there, directly. I don't believe there's gonna be a vote coming out of this, so
Well, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to come out of executive session.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, the meeting is, we're out of executive session. The meeting is adjourned.